Hi everybody, I'm Randa Refaif, Master 1 student in ESPOL, and today I have with me Nick Startin from the University of Bath. Thank you, Nick, for your very interesting conference on Brexit and the mainstreaming of Euroscepticism. I have some additional questions for you. So are Britons warier than other Europeans of the EU?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Brexit result indicates that sadly, there is a majority of British nationals that wanted to come out of the EU. So we're embarked on this road towards Brexit. We're not quite sure what that will be at the end. But I think historically the UK has had problems with identifying with Europe for various historical reasons, I think, related to an island culture, a monolingual culture. The fact that we've always looked towards the USA and our Commonwealth countries. I think historically we were late joining the European Union. So a number of those kind of historic factors, I think, played out in the campaign. And I personally, although I was disappointed, was not that surprised by the outcome.
Also, I would not want you to be the bird of ill omen, but do you think that this mainstreaming of Euroscepticism will lead to more withdrawals of other member states from the EU?
Well, if you were to believe much of the British media and press shortly after the referendum, there was a lot of talk about potential Frexits, Dexits, Grexits. But the reality is that that hasn't really come to fruition, and it doesn't really show any signs of coming to fruition. I think what's happened is that some populist party and Eurosceptic political party leaders and elites have called for referendums in places like France with Marine Le Pen, but the reality is that mainstream governments are not going to go down that road. I don't think there will be, certainly in the short term, another referendum on EU membership in another member state.
And what do you suggest how we as citizens should react to this rise and mainstreaming of Euroscepticism?
Well, I think we have to acknowledge that Euroscepticism is not just a British phenomenon. It's not a British disease, if you like. It's becoming increasingly embedded in all member states, I think, over the last 10, 15 years. I think those of us that support European integration and closer European cooperation, I think we have to look in the mirror at where the European Union is going. And I think there needs to be a robust reform agenda, trying to democratise the European Union, but at the same time, I think trying to prioritise where it should spend its money. I was talking yesterday about the Common Agricultural Policy. I do think that 40% of the budget of the European Union is way too much for one policy area, namely the CAP. And I would like to see that on the reform table, so that the EU can, spend its money perhaps more wisely on other projects which may help European citizens identify with Europe, possibly some of the social issues, trying to tackle the horrendous youth unemployment which exists in the Mediterranean states. So I think we should react with caution. We shouldn't just call it a British case. Although it's unlikely in the short term or medium term that there would be other exits, I think we should acknowledge that it is part of a wider phenomenon, and that Europe as a whole needs to embrace that and try to counteract it with some serious reform.
One last question, Brexit, good or bad?
Really bad. For me, really bad. And quite sad as well.
Well, thank you, Nick, for your answers and your wonderful insights on Brexit and the mainstreaming of Euroscepticism.